August 2nd, 1100. William II, King of England, known as Rufus, the Red King, was killed during a hunting expedition in the New Forest. The death was sudden, caused by an arrow said to have been fired by accident. There was no investigation. The man who shot the arrow fled, and within 3 days, William's younger brother had claimed the throne. Accident? Assassination? Or a carefully planned succession? The death of the Red King remains one of the most enduring mysteries in the history of the English crown. William Rufus was born around 1056, likely in Normandy, the third son of William the Conqueror, the man who invaded England in 1066 and became its first Norman king. His mother was Matilda of Flanders, a politically astute and well-educated noblewoman who came from one of the most powerful families in Europe. Matilda was known for her strong will and intelligence, and she played an active role in court politics during her husband's reign. Through her, William Rufus descended from the Counts of Flanders and had blood ties to the French and even the old Carolingian royal lines. William grew up alongside two older brothers, Robert, the eldest, who inherited Normandy, and Richard, who died young in a hunting accident, as well as a younger brother, Henry, who would eventually become king after William's death. He also had several sisters, including Adela of Blois, whose son Stephen would later claim the English crown. Growing up in such a powerful and ambitious family meant that William's childhood was anything but ordinary. He was raised among warriors, strategists, and churchmen. The court he lived in was full of competition and political scheming. He learned early that survival meant being sharp, bold, and sometimes ruthless. Because he wasn't the oldest son, few expected William to inherit the throne. His older brother Robert was supposed to lead after their father. But William was clever. He stood out for his energy, his sarcastic humor, and his willingness to do what it took to win his father's favor. Chroniclers from the time often mention his quick wit and fierce personality, traits that would define his reign. He also fought alongside his father in military campaigns in France, gaining real battlefield experience while still young. These early years shaped him into a confident and aggressive leader who didn't back down easily. He was never known for kindness or diplomacy, but rather for determination and ambition. Everything changed when William the Conqueror died in 1087. The vast lands he ruled, England and Normandy, were split between his sons. Robert got Normandy. William Rufus was given the crown of England. This division created immediate tension between the brothers, both of whom believed they should rule the entire empire. William's coronation took place at Westminster Abbey, the heart of royal power in England. But taking the crown was only the beginning. His new kingdom was full of problems. Many powerful Norman barons lived in England, but owned land in Normandy. They were unsure where their loyalty should lie. At the same time, the native Anglo-Saxon population still remembered the violent conquest just 20 years earlier. They didn't trust their Norman rulers. And the church, a major force in medieval life, kept a close eye on any king who might try to take too much power. So from the first day of his reign, William Rufus faced challenge after challenge. He would have to be more than just a ruler. He'd need to be a fighter, a strategist, and someone who could outsmart his enemies. His time on the throne would be marked by battles, arguments with the church, and one of the most mysterious royal deaths in English history. Just 1 year after taking the throne, in 1088, William Rufus faced a major challenge: rebellion. A group of powerful Norman barons in England rose up against him. They wanted to remove William and unite England and Normandy under his older brother Robert. Instead of relying only on the Norman elite, William made a bold and unusual move. He turned to the English population, still largely Anglo-Saxon, and promised them lower taxes and better treatment. This was a smart political play. By appealing to their frustration with Norman rule, William gained a new base of support. Anglo-Saxon militias joined his forces, and together they crushed the rebellion. This moment showed something important about William's style of rule. He was not afraid to break tradition or make unexpected alliances if it meant holding on to power. It also marked the beginning of a shift. William, the son of a conqueror, started acting like a king who belonged to England. With the rebellion behind him, William set his sights on expanding his authority beyond England's borders. One of the biggest unresolved challenges lay to the north, Scotland. For years, King Malcolm III of Scotland had resisted English overlordship. He ruled as if England's king had no say in his affairs and continued to test the fragile balance of power between the two realms. William saw this as a direct threat and an opportunity. Instead of negotiating or sending envoys, he turned to military action. He gathered his forces and launched a campaign toward the north, determined to force the Scottish king into submission. His army moved quickly, pressing into Scottish territory and making it clear that the English crown expected to be respected. This wasn't just a symbolic gesture. William's campaign was methodical. He aimed not only to show strength, but also to establish a lasting English presence near the border. The message was clear: England would not be ignored. During this time, William's relationship with his brother Robert also took a new turn. The two brothers reached a formal peace deal. They agreed to support and defend each other's territories, England and Normandy. But while the agreement seemed promising, it was an uneasy truce. Neither fully trusted the other, and both remained wary. In 1092, William achieved a major victory that would shift the balance of power. He captured the city of Carlisle, a key stronghold near the Scottish border. Once part of English territory but then lost to the Scots, Carlisle was more than just a town. It was a symbol of contested power. William turned it into a Norman outpost, built a castle, and used it as a base to control the surrounding region. It also became a launching point for further campaigns into the north. Malcolm III was forced to acknowledge William's dominance in the region. Although this didn't end tensions between England and Scotland, it did bring temporary peace, under English terms. These campaigns weren't just about gaining land. They were designed to send a message to nobles, to the church, and to foreign powers. William Rufus was not just defending a throne, he was expanding a kingdom. In 1096, Robert, William's brother, left for the First Crusade, part of a massive religious movement calling European nobles to fight in the Holy Land. But preparing for that journey wasn't cheap. Robert needed a fortune to raise troops, equip them, and pay his way east. That's when William Rufus saw an opening. The two brothers made a deal. William would pay Robert 10,000 silver marks, a staggering amount of money, in exchange for temporary control over the Duchy of Normandy. For Robert, it was a way to fund his crusading ambitions. For William, it was a calculated power grab. With that payment, William didn't just help his brother, he expanded his own power base. He now ruled not only England, but also Normandy, bringing both halves of their father's old empire under his control. It was a strategic win. The very unity that rebels had hoped for back in 1088 had become a reality. But it was William, not Robert, who sat on top. And this time, it was on William's terms. Back in England, in 1097, William started making his mark in another way, through architecture. That year, he began the construction of Westminster Hall, an ambitious building project that would stand as one of the great achievements of his reign. At the time, it was the largest hall of its kind in Europe, 240 feet long and 67 feet wide, with a high timber roof that amazed visitors. It wasn't just about size, it was about power. Westminster Hall was built to impress. Located next to Westminster Abbey, it became the centerpiece of royal administration. Ceremonies, legal proceedings, and royal councils were held within its stone walls. It was designed to send a message. The monarchy was strong, and William was firmly in control. The hall's construction reflected the style of Norman authority, practical, grand, and built to last. Today, Westminster Hall remains part of the UK Parliament complex. But in William's time, it was a bold and imposing statement about who held the reins of power in the kingdom. But not all of William's fights were on the battlefield. One of his biggest conflicts was with the church. At the heart of the issue was power. William believed that he, as king, had the right to appoint bishops and control church lands. But the Pope, and many within the church, disagreed. They said only the church could choose its leaders. This struggle became known as the investiture controversy. It was happening across Europe, and in England, it took the form of a personal and very public battle between William and Archbishop Anselm of Canterbury. Anselm was a respected religious figure, but William saw him as a challenge to royal authority. When Anselm refused to fully support the king's control over church appointments, William reacted harshly. He blocked Anselm's work, confiscated lands, and eventually forced him into exile. This wasn't just a religious debate. It was about who really held power in medieval England, the king or the church. William wanted full control. The church wanted independence. The fight between William and Anselm reflected that deeper struggle. To his critics, William was cruel and arrogant, a man who saw sacred offices as tools for political gain. To his supporters, he was a strong ruler who didn't let the church interfere in matters of the state. As William's reign entered its final years, the tone shifted. The king had won many battles, but something had changed. Chroniclers from the time mentioned dark rumors, strange dreams, and an atmosphere of tension around the court. William raised taxes again, putting more pressure on the population. At the same time, signs of fear began to emerge. Some spoke of visions. Monks reported dreams of disaster, birds behaving oddly, and eerie feelings in the royal halls. Whether these stories were real or added later, they show that people were uneasy. William, once bold and confident, seemed more isolated. He had few close allies and even fewer friends. He had ruled for nearly 13 years. He had faced rebellion, taken control of Normandy, defied the Pope, and built great monuments to his power. But by the summer of 1100, his reign felt unstable. And in the shadows of the New Forest, something was waiting. In the final weeks of William Rufus's life, written sources suggest that unease had begun to spread within his court. Later chroniclers, particularly those writing after his death, described visions, omens, and warnings. While such reports were typical of medieval narratives surrounding dramatic deaths, they reflect a broader sense that his final days were marked by tension, both politically and personally. On August 2nd, William led a hunting party into the New Forest, a royal hunting ground established by his father, William the Conqueror. The forest was associated with royal privilege, but also with danger. Two of William Rufus's own relatives had previously died there under unusual circumstances, a fact not lost on chroniclers of the time. The group that accompanied the king included several nobles, knights, and household companions. Among them was Walter Tyrrell, a nobleman and skilled archer who had connections to the royal family. William's younger brother, Henry, the future King Henry I, was also present at the hunt that day. As was customary, the hunting party split into smaller groups to pursue game. The New Forest, with its thick tree cover and uneven terrain, posed numerous hazards, including poor visibility and unpredictable footing. At some point during the hunt, William Rufus was struck in the chest by an arrow. The projectile is believed to have pierced his lung, causing immediate death. There were no reliable eyewitness accounts recorded at the time, and no official report survives to explain the sequence of events. No attempt was made to treat or move the king's body by those present at the scene. Walter Tyrrell, later associated with the fatal shot, left the forest shortly after the incident. He was never formally charged or questioned, and his immediate departure fueled speculation. However, no contemporary source conclusively identifies him as the archer responsible. Contemporary sources do not name the person who found William's body. Chronicles simply state that certain countrymen discovered the corpse and brought it to Winchester. In the centuries that followed, local folklore began to supply more specific names. One popular tradition, memorialized in the 19th century inscription on the Rufus stone, identifies the discoverer as a charcoal burner named Purkis, said to have carried the body in a cart over 25 miles to Winchester. Another, even later tradition suggests the man was an arrow maker named Eli Parrott, though this name appears only in modern summaries and has no basis in medieval sources. Whoever they were, the men who transported William's body did so without ceremony, royal escort, or official recognition. The journey is described in later accounts as rough and unceremonious, reflecting either the urgency or the lack of clear authority at the time. No investigation was opened, and no official explanation was given. The event was treated not as a matter for justice or inquiry, but as an accepted, if abrupt, royal death. The cause was widely assumed to be accidental, though this assumption remains debated. The forest where the king fell remained quiet. The fatal arrow was never recovered. The crown, however, did not remain unclaimed for long. William Rufus was dead. Even before his body reached Winchester, his younger brother Henry had already begun to act. Present at the hunt, Henry left the scene immediately. He did not remain behind to oversee the recovery of the king's body, nor to consult with other nobles. Instead, he rode directly to Winchester with clear intent. Henry arrived in Winchester and went straight for the treasury, the key to royal authority in medieval England. The treasury was initially held by William of Breteuil, a Norman baron loyal to Duke Robert, the elder brother and legal heir. But Henry asserted himself, reportedly demanding access and convincing Breteuil to stand aside. Control of the treasury gave him command of funds, regalia, and the administrative machinery of the realm. Henry wasted no time. With the treasury secured, he departed for London. The route was long, but he moved with speed, clearly intent on securing the crown before any rival could interfere. Robert was still away on the First Crusade, but others, including the baronial supporters of Robert's claim, were still in England. Henry needed legitimacy, and he knew that delay was dangerous. Only 3 days after William's death, Henry was crowned King of England at Westminster Abbey. Neither the Archbishop of Canterbury nor the Archbishop of York had arrived. Both were away. Yet the coronation went ahead, performed by Bishop Maurice of London. The absence of senior clergy did not stop Henry. He had moved too far, too fast, to let ceremony delay his claim. To some observers, the sequence of events seemed suspiciously well-timed. Henry had acted with extraordinary urgency, seizing the treasury, rushing to London, and arranging a coronation all within 72 hours. Whether his actions were calculated or merely opportunistic, they worked. He wore the crown before anyone could challenge him. William Rufus died without a wife, without children, and with little public mourning. His body was taken to Winchester Cathedral and buried beneath the central tower. Soon after, in 1107, that tower collapsed, a structural failure, but one widely interpreted as an omen. Over the centuries, William's death gave rise to a mixture of legend, folklore, and historical curiosity. The place where he fell in the New Forest is today marked by the Rufus Stone, a memorial bearing an inscription that recalls the king's sudden and unexplained death. Though the exact location is debated, the monument near Beaulieu remains a focal point for those tracing the Red King's story. The forest itself became part of the tale. Stories of unnatural events followed: a ghostly black dog, strange red water in the ponds after rain, and eerie silence in the clearing. Some of these legends still influence local folklore, and walking trails in the New Forest continue to reference the king's final hunt. Nearby, Ocknell Pond and the Sir Walter Tyrrell Inn are visited by tourists, with signs marking key spots tied to the story. Interpretive plaques explain the context of William's death, and tour guides occasionally offer retellings with varying levels of speculation. The tale has entered public memory not just as an event, but as a mystery, and as a cautionary tale about power and fate. Today, some of William's bones are believed to rest in mortuary chests within Winchester Cathedral, though his tomb no longer exists in its original form. His skull is missing. Despite the dramatic end and fractured legacy, the Red King remains one of England's most enigmatic medieval rulers.